Welcome to the session CEC Gurukul. We are discussing what is the strategy and what is the strategic thinking. So strategy can be in three terms with reference to the Henry Mintzberg's strategic safari. There is a intended strategy. The intended strategy is based upon what we had planned. The plan of action in terms of positioning yourself in the marketplace based upon the facts and figures that you have in your hand. For example, I want to be a company which is going to provide the logistic solutions to the partners. And therefore, my intended strategy with all the resources that we have is to become the biggest, largest logistics company. While we are working with the dynamics of the competition, the dynamics of the demand of the customer, with the data that I collect during my logistics, regarding the requirement for number of different products which are associated with the logistics outflow, and I start working in creating my own web-based data system which I can distribute for decision making to my partners. It is an emergent strategy which is based upon the process that I have, based upon the process of working and functioning that I have. But from the plan of action and the processes, I realize that my biggest share of the company or the revenue is coming out based upon the national and the international data and the web services, that web support that I am able to provide to all my partners, to all my customers. My power is based upon the database company. My power is based upon the better web services that I am able to provide even to our logistics wing. So I am a database company, and eventually I become a conglomerate. So my intended strategy is the plan of action. My emergent strategy is based upon the process, and realized strategy is the final outcome that I have for this. And therefore, we have different kinds of strategies. The intended strategy, which is deliberate, and intended strategy, which is many times not realized, which we call it as a unrealized strategy. Out of the unrealized strategy, because of our persistent adjustment in the course of actions, adjustment into something new that I would like to bring in for improvement into my business process, many times I have the emergent strategy. And of course, if I am able to have an intended strategy which I am following deliberately, I call it as a realized strategy. And that is where we define the journey of my intent to the journey of realization or not realization, but for the sake of business, we keep on trying for achieving our goals. So strategy is not about one-time action plan. It is a continuous process. And therefore, it is the process of combining an articulation of human goals and the organization of human activity to achieve those goals. It is about setting the goals which involve the identification of the opportunity, continuous identification of the opportunity. It is the process of translating the perceived opportunity into successful outcomes. And these successful outcomes can be achieved by the purposive action which are sustained over the significant period of time. A strategy, at a minimum, needs to have a clear intent which can be translatable into the specific objectives and some defined and effective means of achieving those objectives by deliberate actions which involve the use of resources to which one has got the access. The strategy may or may not reflect a fully self-conscious, deliberative and systematic approach to the setting of objectives and their achievement, which then require very detailed planning. And therefore, many times a strategy can be implicit, or many times it can be also a unconscious activity. A strategy has 4 basic elements that we need to understand and internalize. There needs to be an intent to achieve, a strategic intent which is based upon the identification of the right set of opportunities, the possible opportunities which are into the future, the opportunities which can be based upon the future turn of events which can be forecasted, the opportunities which can be created by the right combination of the resources. So, I need to have a strategic intent which should be to realize the opportunities or create the opportunities. And the strategy has to work upon the mobilization of resources. Mobilization of resources to achieve these opportunities in the right way and in the right manner. It has to have a systematic action to combine the intent with the mobilization of resources for the achievement of the opportunities, for the realization of the opportunities. And therefore, a strategy has 4 basic elements: intent, systematic action, mobilization of resources for the actualization, estimation and realization of the opportunities. For a powerful strategy, we need to have a proper strategic thinking. What is the value of a strategic thinking? Do we require a strategic thinking? If the strategic thinking is different from the normal thinking that we have, do all the people across the board, they think strategically? As we have already discussed, we have got different strategies. We have got military strategy, we have got business strategy, where we work upon the product market scope, we understand the growth vector, we try to achieve the competitive advantage, where we try to synergize. Or we have got the corporate strategy, where we are looking for the right opportunities where to invest and new businesses to create. if all these four elements, four types of strategies are same, perhaps the area of functioning is different, but the dimensions of strategic thinking in all these three is almost same. The strategic thinking has two basic elements wherein the action of mind, action of activities is in two different levels or two different ways. One is the vertical rational thinking, and second is the lateral intuitive thinking. The vertical rational thinking is based upon logical understanding and the estimation of the facts and data. Lateral intuitive thinking is about the creative combination of the ideas. And these two thinkings, they deal with the convergent problem, which may have only one solution, or the divergent problems where there can be number of different solutions. So we try to apply the vertical thinking and the lateral thinking, which both are necessary for the strategic thinking, for having the convergent issues to be addressed to, or the divergent issues to be addressed to. We need to know the convergent, which we also call it as the problem, convergent problem, where we have only one solution, when it is based upon the vertical thinking. Vertical thinking can give you the logical cause and effect based solutions. But in terms of the divergent thinking, divergent issues, where there are many solutions, many aspects, we require the application of creativity, imagination, and of course the intuition. For example, if I have to create a vision for my organization, then we would like to have a lateral thinking, a broad aspect of the solutions that we would like to apply upon. But if I have to ensure the effective operation of the realization of the vision based upon the realization of the goals or the policies that we have created, we would have a vertical thinking. Now, strategic thinking based upon these two dimensions of lateral thinking and vertical thinking, they need to have the combination of both. It has to be both lateral and vertical, which can be applied to the divergent or the convergent issues. And therefore, based upon the convergent and divergent thinking, the strategic thinking gives us an orientation for looking into the future, with an aim for a balance between stability and flexibility, wherein we are able to create and ask new questions, where we look forward for a holistic and integrative orientation to the various problems or the organizational opportunities. The two kinds of thinkings, they help us in acknowledging the complexities, and since it is the vertical thinking which is a part of a strategy, we are able to define the path for achieving the goal that is set up by the lateral dimension of thinking. The strategy has to be interactive. The strategic orientation has helped us to move and cover a long journey in last 60-70 years. Let's look into the various stages of the strategy and how a strategy has evolved based upon the lateral and vertical thinking. From 1945 to 1960, the strategy was only based upon the economic resources mobilization, where the issue was to create the best operational excellence in terms of the rapid expansion of the supply. And the long range planning was one of the basic requirement which was at the heart of any strategy. So we can say it was more of the solution to the convergent problems. Stage 2, where strategy further moved in terms of creating, understanding and doing the financial planning for integrating the profitability with main aim of the organization. Over the period in stage 2, somewhere in 1960s to 70s, because of the competition as well as the emerging opportunities, a strategy became more concerned with directing resources into the most promising areas, where the focus on market and product differentiation and enterprise positioning became more important. We started realizing the power of the lateral thinking in strategy. We started realizing the new innovative ways of creating and recreating the resources, generating the resources, or the combination of the resources, as well as identifying the right set of gaps wherein the product and the market could be differentiated well and positioned well. The notion of the experience curve with respect to the having more and more share of the market was one of the major focus of the strategy in this era. At the same time, the profit impact of the marketing strategies called PIMS was introduced. Somewhere in 70s and 80s, there was a new world order with the oil becoming one of the major resources. The strategy now focused on allocation of resources, which included cash flows, which was to develop the competitive advantage and which was to yield the profit that generated the investments funds that were required. Where the companies, they started creating the portfolios of enterprises, where the products and services and the nature of competitive behavior in the products and the services and in the marketplace became one of the focus areas. The competition leads to focus upon the creation of efficiencies. The strategy in this era was increasingly being made at three different levels. The corporate level, where the focus was to acquire, create, generate invest into the new business portfolios. The business level, where the functioning of the strategic business units as a separate entity and maximizing their market share, maximizing the value in different areas became more important. And simultaneously, the focus was also on the functional strategies, where the focus was to see that the functional areas of marketing, areas of supply chain, human resource, financial services or finance in the organizations, they are aligned with the goal which are set at the business level and the corporate level, and they have their own strategies. 1980s and 2000, because of the information technology, because of the change of the world order, because of the new sets of technologies being introduced into the market, the revolution of communication and information, it has started to beginning to bite and increase the demands on the business. The environment was unpredictable, as it is now also, and it became more complicated. And therefore, the new dimensions, they emerged before the firms, before the organizations. Henceforth, the strategy here was used to manage and integrate the problems in many different areas, which included government deregulation, which included contrasting economic circumstances, which worked upon adjusting to the rapidly changing technology, and also creating new conversationist and environmental demands. The strategy here expanded to embrace all the new areas, which started including a return to a proper consideration of the enterprise's available resources to meet the various emerging requirements. The strategy was gifted with the thinking of the researchers, where the resource-based views and dynamic capabilities, they became some new dimensions, where the focus was to create the competitive advantage based upon creating the access to the resources which are valuable, non-imitable, which are rare, or where there could be organization-based resources. We saw a number of multinational firms emerging as the winners in this era. And there were many companies based upon the technology, they recreated, reinvented themselves. The new strategies were introduced. We saw the success of the companies like Microsoft. We saw the success of the companies like Apple. We saw the readjustment and reorganization of Unilevers. We saw the growth of firms like Infosys, Mahindra, etc. The strategy in this era was based upon the thinking which was to the best of the usage of the convergent and divergent thinking. Today, we are in a most complex systems. We are in an environment which is highly evolutionary, and here we require the strategies which are to be precise, where we are looking forward to evolve, to embrace the evolving innovations. The challenge of the climate change, the challenge of the disparity in the income across the world because of the nexus, because of the great collaborations, has given us the challenge of sustainability, where we are discussing the power of localization versus the power of globalization, where we have been encountering the situations like COVID, where the one world order is being debated to the local resource competence, where we are looking for new leadership styles, where we are looking for the entrepreneurial interventions, new entrepreneurial ways and mechanisms and styles, where we are talking about the dynamic ways in the dynamic world. The strategy is changing with defining its own dynamic capabilities. We are discussing a strategy in terms of the competitive landscape. We are discussing a strategy in terms of the blue ocean, where we are talking about creating your own opportunities, where we are talking about creating new capabilities of new world order, where the focus is to create an effective knowledge base for the strategy. The strategy today, with the convergent and divergent and the right application of the thinking and right set of orientation, is much more complex and yet much more interesting. It's more than a chessboard. It's challenging every day. It is about creating more opportunities for your organization. Mind you, we need to have a strategy at all levels. Thank you very much.